Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ Dhammaṃ Sanghaṃ Namasami. So Saturday night, 18th of October. Last weekend we had our Katina festival, robe offering ceremony on Sunday, and tomorrow many of us in the community, a resident community, and possibly our friends here, going up to Amravati for their Katina celebration tomorrow. So it's the season, Katina season, 1 month. So the annual 3-month rains retreat, traditional rains retreat, it's part of the monastic tradition, Buddhist monastic tradition, and it has different forms in different schools of Buddhism, but in particular in the Theravada form, which is what we are. It's 3 months. You make the determination, the adhitthana, to stay in the same living place. So you don't, unless it's a very, very severe situation, you don't change where you live. So you don't decide halfway through, I think I fancy moving to Arnhem Monastery or going off wandering. There's specific reasons for traveling. You can travel up to 6 full days before you need to come back. So you can't go too far from home, and you can do that again, but you have to come back. But when that determination finishes, which it did about 10 or 11 days ago, then we are free to travel again and do things which are otherwise restricted during the rains retreat. So, one of the things that we're allowed to do again is to wander off like a walking pilgrimage. Taking time to just you pack up, you're wearing your robes, and you bring your alms bowl, and you obviously you need to keep yourself protected from the weather and the elements. What we can't do as bhikkhus or siladharas is to bring our own food. We can't just pack up fill up our rucksack with enough food to get by for a few days, and because we don't carry money, it's not like you just drop in some nice cafe along the way or drop off at the supermarket. So for those of you either staying here right now or living here or have been around the last couple of days, I've been reflecting on this a bit, like at the mealtime I've been mentioning it. And because one of our monks and novices did go off and do a mini walking pilgrimage. They did a 1-night, 1-day pilgrimage a couple of days ago. But typically it's longer. It's longer. It can be anything from a few days, or it can be anything from this 1 day to several months of wandering. And so it's a way of putting ourselves out into a more vulnerable situation, and see what happens. Because if we're just going out in, it's different if you're taking a lay person with you that has funds, and they can carry food if they want to carry the food, and cook for you along the way. That's one way of doing these walking pilgrimages. Very valid. But the other way is, just going, as brown robe monks and nuns in our tradition, not using money. You really you really are vulnerable. You don't know where you're going to sleep. You don't know whether you're going to get food or not. You don't know really anything, what the weather's going to be like. And it creates, and we put ourselves into a position of meeting, hopefully meeting our attachments, or at least some of them, especially around security, around sureness, or at least expectation and things like that. All sorts of things. Our attachment, if we're attached to comfort, if we're attached to certain level, because it's usually pretty uncomfortable. So the other night, Ajahn Ahimsako and Samana Metteo, they had done a full day here. It was a regular day here, Thursday, early morning chores, and then full work period in the morning, and then free time. They were probably packing and getting ready, and then evening they came to the evening puja, and then at 8:30 they left. I don't know what time. What time did you actually leave the monastery? 8:45. And so they walked in. So they had a destination, the Chichester, which is about 15, 16 miles. And so what is that? 20, 25, 26 kilometers. For those of you who have walked to Chichester, there's different ways to go, but the way we typically go is straight up and over. And it's pretty gentle, the first patch, and then you get to places, and generally speaking, there's a really tough slog up to the top, and then it's very nice up on the top, and then you go down, and then. So anyway, they chose, but neither of them had walked it before, and they're leaving in the dark. They did take torches, but they didn't know the way really. They had a map, and reading a map at night can be pretty interesting. And trying to see also landmarks and things. So they put themselves into a very vulnerable situation. That's vulnerable. Extra hardship, not just leaving in the morning. Oh, right, okay. When we see the white church, then we carry on. And we go, you turn left there at that red barn. Oh, what red barn? What church? You probably wouldn't see it at night. So they walked until about midnight. And then they found a place to sleep, and finding a place to sleep which is not on somebody's land, private land, because we want to, we don't want to do anything which is, displeasing to people. We need to be very, very cautious around that, and sometimes it's impossible to know. We don't cook. We don't, make a campfire. We certainly don't smoke and drink and do drugs. So it's very, very low impact. We just sleep, get up, leave, hopefully no trace. And that's our policy, no trace. But they did have an encounter. The next morning, one of the farmer spotted them, and he came and chatted. But it worked out okay, and everything was fine in the end, and they carried on and then got to Chichester, and some people did know they were coming, so they were pretty sure that they were going to replace some of those lost calories from walking 16 miles and climbing up and over. But in particular, when we do longer pilgrimages, walking pilgrimages, we'll go for several days, and you might, maybe some days people might know you're coming to the region. They've told you, oh, look, let us know when you're there, and we'll be there in the city center. We'll offer you some food, and that's good. Sometimes monks and nuns have undertaken very long ones, up to 2-3 months of walking. So even if we go for 3 or 4 or 5 days, even if we don't get a shred of food, even if we don't even get anything, we'll survive. We're not going to die. We don't die from lack of food for that many days. As long as you're drinking water, you'll be okay. You'll feel a bit weak, but you'll be okay. Won't die. But go out for, 10 days, 15, 20, 30, 60, 75, you'll die. Right? So you're really in the hands of the universe, really. We're subject to, and every day we're subject to just the kindness and generosity of the lay community. Whether we're going out for a walking pilgrimage or whether we're staying here, it's the monastery doesn't shop. It just relies on whatever rolls in here into the monastery. It's amazing. However, this here again, putting ourselves into that, stepping outside that comfort zone, even though it's not 100% sure that we'll get things here. In 46 years in the monastery, there's never been a day where there was not enough food to feed everybody that was here. Not once. I've asked the elders that have lived here on and off from the start. Not one day. Going out on a walking pilgrimage, you hear stories. You do hear stories. Oh yeah, that time in Wales, we didn't quite make it to a village in time to go alms round, or maybe we have gone through stand quietly, just peacefully, because we can't ask for food. Can't ask. You just have to stand. And occasionally I hear stories that you don't get anything. You don't get anything, but it's okay. We're not going out to be comfortable. We're not going out to eat. It's not why we're going on these walking pilgrimages. We're not going sightseeing. We're not going to impress anybody. We're going to, and so the word in Thai for these walking pilgrimages is tudong. And it's derived from the Pali scriptural word dutanga. Tudong, dutanga. And as I was saying at the meal today, one of the translations that one of my teachers uses is to shake off the defilements. So the defilements typically are referred to classically in our tradition as greed, hatred, and delusion, confusion. So to shake them off, so it's by confronting them. I like to think more like confronting them and letting go. So then we see things that we're hanging on to that we don't realize. Even living here in the monastery, even though on some levels it's incredibly comfortable. I mean, first of all, look at this space that we're sitting in here. It's one of my favorite rooms. The hut that I'm living in now is very comfortable. It's nice. It's a good sized room. I've got a mattress. It's got lighting. I've got heating. It's very comfortable. But living in the forest, no electricity, no running water, no proper bathroom. It's some of the huts are difficult to get to. There's steep hills and things like that. Not so comfortable. So, but by going, even those things, even like living, putting up with a certain amount of familiar discomfort, we get used to it pretty quick. It's amazing how quickly a human beings can adapt to our surroundings, and that's good. That's good. Adaptability is really something that I know I emphasize in my own practice to develop adaptability, but also I encourage other people, because the more adaptable we are, then hopefully the less we suffer. And it's not just about adapting to the material world, the physical world, but adapting the heart. Can the heart adapt to changing conditions, the feelings, emotions, thoughts that are we're sense beings. We are, we have senses. We have the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, but we have this mind, and also mind and heart. They're co-joined. We have a heart, and so adjusting. When we see, hear, smell, taste, touch something, there's going to be feeling tones arising of various strengths. And so to be able to adapt to the changing inner responses to our changing conditions around us. So this is another beautiful way of putting ourselves, or beautiful thing about putting ourselves into intentional situations of potential hardship. Maybe we do a walking pilgrimage where everything just couldn't go smoother. I mean, we never get lost. We never, we always get food, plenty of food. People say, "Oh, please sleep in my. I've got a guest house here. Please come." And they make lots of cups of tea for you, and there's a few other things that we are allowed to eat in the evening. A few we call them tonics, to get some calories, replenish the calories. They might say, "Oh, here's a dark bar. We understand you can have dark chocolate. Here's a bar of dark chocolate waiting on your bed, in your nice, comfy cottage." And then the next morning you go, and then they say, "Oh, well, we're going to give you a ride to the town, so you can." It might just go super comfortable, get completely spoiled. But also to adapt to that. To adapt to that, because here again, like when we read the suttas, the scriptures in our tradition, and we hear the changing conditions that the Buddha encountered. Here he is, a fully enlightened Buddha. So sometimes, and he'd be on his walking tours, spent so much of his life as the Buddha, still wandering and walking. They didn't really have established monasteries for quite a while. And even then, he'd be wandering. So sometimes he would be, oh, Lord Buddha, please stay in this 7-story mansion. Or that he would, be looking for a place to stay, and there was a little potter's shed, a little extra shed. It would have been probably very makeshift, with probably just an earthen floor, and just a dry place. Oh yeah, here, you can stay here. So sometimes we're sleeping under a tree. So here he is, a fully enlightened Buddha, and just accepting whatever was offered. So that's another thing, for instance, if we are offered, let's say we go out on our tudong, and we really geared up for it, and we're excited about it, because it tends to be because we want to do it, it tends to be very exciting for us. Very different. It's an interesting challenge. I know the couple of times that I did tudong, I was really, really jazzed up about it. And so, but if we go out and if we have an idealistic view of tudong, for instance, like, no, I'm only going to sleep under a tree, and I'm only going to do this, only going to do that, and then all of a sudden we're being kind of bathed in comfort. After having planned, I probably won't get a bath for the next 10 days. I'm going to, tough it out, and then we're in comfort. But then if we suffer over the comfort, then that's also confronting suffering. If we're actually suffering, if we're clinging to the idea of what a true tudong monk or nun is, and clinging to, or maybe we make an adhitthana, which Pali word, which generally translates to a determination. Okay, I'm determined that I'm only going to eat 2 handfuls of food for the next 2 weeks, or whatever. You can make determinations, and then people are incredibly kind and they give you this. It's good if we're actually suffering over that. Because seeing suffering, to actually see the dukkha, to see, well, what am I clinging to? Why am I stressing over kindness? Or the opposite. Maybe we expect, I've heard other people going out on tudong. Every day they got lots of food, and oftentimes they got invited in to sleep in someplace dry and warm. And then you get out there and it's raining, it's miserable, it's windy, you didn't get any food one day, you love a hot cup of tea, and nothing's happening, and you suffer. So here again, what I'm pointing to is that whatever actually brings up that dukkha, that discontent, dissatisfaction, dis-ease, unsatisfactoriness, stress, then the tudong is doing its job, in my opinion. Then that's why we go out. Here again, we're not going for tourism. We're not going to get fed. We're not going to impress anybody. We're not impressing ourselves. We're going, this is Dhamma practice. This is Dhamma practice. And so, and also just let's maybe not talk so much about tudong for a few minutes. So using this adhitthana, this determination, anywhere. And this for any of us, and also any of us can go out on a walking pilgrimage, right? We don't have to be a monk or nun to go out and put ourselves into a vulnerable situation, a more challenging, or choose anything. We can make these determinations in whatever form of life we're living in. So years ago, I'd completed my first 5 years of training as a bhikkhu. That's a sort of a bit of a benchmark, a bit of a milestone in monastic life. And after that time, we tend to be given more opportunity to do more things outside the monastery. And so I had the idea that I wanted to do a very long walking pilgrimage. And I got permission. I was living at Amaravati. I got permission from Ajahn Ahimsako and the Sangha. And and it was like permission like 2 years in advance. I was so keyed up. 2 years in advance, and I started training. I had my backpack, and I was out doing training walks like 18 months before even leaving. I would put it in a little over the top. So anyway, there was a learning aspect to that. I did learn something. So anyway, there are some of the elders, the most senior monks from the Wat Papong Ajahn Chah tradition, were visiting Amaravati that year that I was preparing. I was still about a year and a half in advance. And so we were in one evening, some of us were giving a massage, massaging this Thai elder's feet and his calves, and it's a very traditional thing to do, and asking Dhamma questions, and there was somebody translating for us, for those of us who didn't speak Thai. And so I put my hands like this, and I said, "Oh, Lampa." I said, I'm now a Majjhima monk, means, I've completed my 5 years. I'm now in, sort of middling years, 5 to 10 years of monk. And I have the opportunity to go on a tudong, on a walking pilgrimage, a big one. Or I'm thinking of it. I think maybe I hadn't quite had permission yet. And I'm really considering doing that. And do you have any advice? Do you have any advice? And he says, and it got translated from Thai to English. He says, yeah, stay in the monastery, figure out what your defilements are, and work on them. That is not what I wanted to hear. I really didn't want to hear that. I wanted to hear, oh, that's really good, putting yourself out there, and Majjhima years. I remember my Majjhima years, Tudong. I really didn't want to hear, stay in the monastery, figure out what your defilements are, and work on them. Anyway, I went on the pilgrimage, and I did learn a lot. It was a long pilgrimage. I'm not going to go into any stories about that because I don't want to. It's not really part of this Dhamma offering this evening. But it was very long. It was 75 days, and it was very grueling. And I really did face a lot of suffering, and it was very beneficial. But I think the elder was also right. We don't need to go out on tudong to confront, to learn to see and figure out, well, what am I actually clinging to? What am I hanging on to? Because with suffering, with dukkha, then it's the first of the Four Noble Truths. I think we probably all know that. And the second noble truth is there is a cause. Like, people can't give us dukkha. It's not just like, boom, we're not just given dukkha. We are responsible for our dukkha. Okay, sorry folks. Be very nice. We can blame people for pain. Like maybe somebody says something to us, does something which is painful, and the cause, but that's just pain. The suffering, the dukkha, the discontent, the non-acceptance, that we have control over. That, because how is it that two people can experience the exact same thing, and one person suffers and one person doesn't? That points to something. So that expression, I know I've quoted it dozens of times, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Now, this is not to be believed, like all of these are not to be believed. These are things to be reflected upon. But the dukkha, that dissatisfaction, unsatisfactoriness, non-acceptance, discontent, unable to abide in, and having to get rid of that and to make ourselves well again, that we're in charge of. Can we actually experience things and feel pain? Yeah, and be displeased and all of that. Can have those a certain amount of feeling there, but not suffer. Do I have to get rid of that to be whole again? Do we have to do that? Then there's that suffering element. And so, and we can just, to use situations, whatever situation we're finding in, of course we should seek out places like this, have places at home, or groups, places to go where we can be quiet enough to develop the inner skills to do this. Of course, if we're living on the front line of some war-torn country, I mean, how much can we do? We're just trying to get enough food and safety to survive. I'm using an extreme, obviously. But to use situations like this, seek them out, use them to develop, and work with the smaller stuff, right? Work with those things, the littler stuff that comes up, and then big stuff lands, and all right, we develop a robustness in our practice. So using in the monastery, it's community life. I listen to a lot of Dhamma on YouTube. It's a great source of Dhamma, I find. And I can't remember that. I just spotted it. I didn't listen to it yet. I spotted the title of a Dhamma talk from our monastery in California by Giri, where actually myself and Ajahn Ahimsako became monks. But it was something about realizing enlightenment through community, through community life. That using because community, on any given night, there's about 35 people living in this monastery. 20 to 25 monks and nuns, and then about 10 to 12 lay people. And so, and we, last time I counted, about a month ago, 13 different nationalities. And so using community life, flexing, adapting, learning how to adapt and learn to live together harmoniously. There's a give and take. There's a letting go. So using community, using family, amazing opportunity to develop. Because I've never been a parent, but I've been a child. I've lived in family. I still have some family members that are still alive. Yeah, there's you really have to flex and expand and adapt and cooperate and all these qualities, and all of those entail letting go. You need to let go. For school, for work, whatever, just going through a crowded city, just being able to pass through central London. This is Dhamma practice. We can be practicing, working with the things that we like, the things that we dislike, and learning how to transcend liking and disliking. So that lovely phrase that is often quoted of Luang Por Chah, liking and disliking, same value. In Dhamma, it's the same value. There's something caused something to be liked, something caused something to be disliked, causes and conditions. Some things we like, some things we don't, some things painful, some things pleasurable. But in Dhamma, the consciousness, the heart and mind that can hold those things, equal value. They're caused, they're impermanent, they're insubstantial, they fade away. So if we can feel those things, be totally human, experience humanity fully, the whole range from bliss to horror, from pain to pleasure, but to remain whole. And so use whatever situation. So I've spent a lot of this evening talking about, for instance, this walking pilgrimage tradition, but really, just to use, to not be afraid of being outside of our comfort zone, to not be afraid to feel discomfort, to not feel like we have to barricade our comfort. But to, yeah, of course, make things comfortable, make things suitable. That doesn't mean we just, completely give up on making a nice environment to live in. No, it's important. Living in places of suitable kinds. This is one of the phrases in the chanting we do quite frequently. Associating with good people and being in a suitable situation is really important. But to not be afraid if we end up being outside of that. Be cautious where we put ourselves. Like, don't put ourselves, if we want to go outside our comfort zone, don't put ourselves into intentional danger. That would be foolish. That's not wisdom. But just not to not be afraid, to really use whatever arises in our situations, when things change in ways or things come up unexpected. The unexpected is actually one of the, I think personally, one of the richest places for the realization of Dhamma, for letting go. When everything's going my way and expected and kind of really smooth groove and all that stuff, it's pleasant, it's nice. It's not to be ignored, and it's to be enjoyed. But I find my own spiritual growth has been in the unexpected, in the unwanted, in the things that really, whoa, wow. Now, does this need to be an obstacle to my well-being? Does this situation? And sometimes it is. I'm working on this. Sometimes it is, but then that gives us a chance to then go, well, what am I hanging on to? To see this, I'm grasping at something. What is it? And when we see it, most typically, there's a softening around it and a letting go. There's an ability to hold things in a way where we're not suffering. We can actually live a whole human life, wholesome life, and still be well, even when things are not the way we want them. So I'll offer that for reflection this evening.